Let me ask you something simple, but real. Have you ever asked a woman a question, just one sentence, and noticed her eyes shift, her breath pause, like something deep inside her just lit up? Most guys talk too much. They chase attention with stories, jokes, flexes. But the men who linger in her mind long after the conversation ends, they ask different questions, not louder ones, just deeper ones. See, there are three kinds of questions a man can ask. The first kind entertains. It makes her laugh, pass time, kill boredom. It's fun but forgettable. The second kind connects. It opens doors to her values, dreams, personality. That's where most nice guys live, asking safe questions, hoping for a spark. But the third kind, that's where everything changes. Because some questions don't just connect, they disrupt. They stir emotion, they slip past logic and land in a place no one else usually reaches. The part of her that feels, not thinks. The part that lives in imagination, tension, sensation. These are the questions that make her remember you in silence. When no one's texting, when she's lying in bed, when something you said echoes in her mind. Not because it was clever, but because it awakened something inside her. And here's the twist. They're not sexual, not on the surface. They're not dirty or direct, but they make her body feel something real. A flutter, a rush, a pull toward you that she can't explain. That's the difference between talking and imprinting, between a man who entertains and a man who affects. This isn't about pickup lines. This is about presence, masculine presence, the kind of presence that doesn't try to impress, but invites her to experience herself differently in your energy. The truth is, most men speak to be heard, but a few rare men, those grounded, calm, self-aware men, ask questions that make her feel. And once you make a woman feel something rare, something internal, something she can't explain to her friends, she remembers you. Not the words, but how you made her feel. That's the kind of man you're about to become. So in this video, we're going beyond charm, beyond tricks, beyond small talk. I'm going to show you 7 questions, subtle, powerful, unforgettable, that create tension, desire, and emotional pull without ever saying anything explicit. Because when you master the art of emotional suggestion, you don't have to chase anyone. You become the memory that stays. Let's begin. 1. There's a certain kind of question that doesn't ask for an answer. It invites her imagination. It's not sexual. It's not aggressive. It's not even a line. It's a doorway, a flicker of something unexpected. You look her in the eyes, calm, grounded, and say, if I gave you 5 seconds of freedom, what would you do with me? Now pause for a second. Really let that land, because what you've just done is disrupt the script. Most conversations follow a path. They're safe, predictable, rehearsed. And most women, to be honest, are tired of that. Tired of answering, what do you do? Where are you from? What's your type? But this question, it's different. It's an emotional curveball. You're not making a move. You're not pressuring. You're offering her a moment of imagined freedom with you at the center. She might laugh. She might deflect. She might flirt back or say something ridiculous like, I'd push you into traffic. That's fine. That's not rejection. It's a defense. It means you hit something. And if she hesitates, if she looks away, smiles, fidgets, or just avoids the question entirely, that's even better. Because now, her mind is spinning. 5 seconds. Freedom. You. She's filling in the blanks. She's picturing something. And more importantly, she's feeling something. And here's the part most men miss. It's not about what she says. It's about the shift, the energy, the pause, the breath, the tension. You don't follow it up with another question. You don't explain it. You let the silence hang like smoke in the air. That's where presence lives. Your tone is everything here. It should feel like a whisper, like something you didn't even plan to say. Calm, curious, no smirk, no lean in, no hungry eyes, just stillness. Because when you ask it right, it doesn't sound seductive. It feels seductive. You're not chasing arousal, you're inviting permission. And what you create in that moment isn't chemistry, it's curiosity, it's anticipation. She starts wondering not just what she would do, but what kind of man asks something like that so calmly. And that's the key. When a woman associates you with emotional freedom, with playful tension, with a moment that made her feel something real, she stops comparing you to everyone else. You become a mystery, a memory, a man who opened a door inside her that she didn't even know she'd locked, all with one sentence. And that's only the beginning. 2. Now here's a question that doesn't just break the ice, it melts it, slowly, quietly, without saying anything obvious. What do you think I'd do to you if no one else was watching? You don't ask it to provoke. You don't ask it with a smirk. You drop it gently, like an afterthought, then let it breathe. Because this isn't a question that demands an answer. It's a seed you plant. And here's what makes it powerful. You're not describing anything. You're not pushing a fantasy. You're letting her imagination do the heavy lifting. And trust me, she will. She might laugh it off. She might raise an eyebrow. She might look away or hold your gaze a little longer than usual. But no matter how she responds, her mind is already building the scene, the setting, the tone, the tension, and more importantly, your role in it. You're not telling her what kind of man you are. You're letting her decide. That's deeper than attraction. That's not flirting. It's imprinting. She starts bonding to the version of you that lives inside her own fantasy. But here's the part most men don't understand. You don't follow up. You don't chase the moment. You don't fill the silence. You let it linger, because the power isn't in her answer. It's in the pause, the tension, the way she avoids your eyes or holds them just a beat too long. That's energy shifting. That's curiosity awakening. Most men are afraid of silence, but silence, that's where she reveals herself. It might be hours later, in bed, in the shower, walking alone when that question comes back, and suddenly she's replaying it. Not because of what you said, but because of how it made her feel. You didn't push, you didn't perform, you didn't ask for anything, you just created a vacuum, and her desire filled it. That's presence. That's calm confidence. That's the energy of a man who doesn't chase chemistry. He lets it build on its own. So ask that question, and then say nothing. Because if you do it right, she won't forget the words. She'll remember the silence that came after them. There's a way to make her feel something without ever laying a hand on her. No touch, no flirt, no tension in your voice. Just one calm, grounded question that pulls her straight into her body. What part of your body responds first when you're turned on? Now pause for a second. That's not a pickup line. It's not about sex. It's not dirty. It's not even forward. What it is intimate. Because this isn't a question about what she likes in bed. It's about awareness. It's about presence. It's about bringing her into contact with herself right here in this moment. Most women aren't used to this. They've been admired for their bodies, objectified, praised, maybe even worshipped. But rarely has a man asked them to notice what their body actually does, where it all starts. A breath, a pulse, a shift in posture, a flutter somewhere deep and quiet. And when you ask this question, you're not looking for a specific answer. You're looking for that moment, that tiny pause, when she suddenly becomes aware of herself through you. She might deflect. She might laugh it off. She might challenge you or play coy. Doesn't matter. That's not rejection. That's her defenses reacting to something new, something real. And if she answers, my breath quickens, my neck tingles, my stomach tightens. You don't grin, you don't escalate, you hold it. Just a slow nod, maybe repeat it back in a whisper, your neck, and leave it there. Because what you've just done is trigger what I call a body memory loop. Now, every time that part of her body responds, even when she's alone days later, you are the one who comes to mind. Not because you touched her, but because you led her into awareness of her own desire. That's a level most men never reach. They're too busy chasing reactions, chasing approval, chasing the moment. But not you. You slowed down. You stayed grounded. You asked the question that invited her to meet herself, with you watching, but not reaching. That's what seduction really is. It's not performance. It's presence. It's the ability to awaken something inside her and let it unfold on its own. 4. There's a question I love asking, not because I care about the answer, but because of what the answer reveals beneath it. What's the one thing you're always drawn to in a man? Ask it slow, not like you're interviewing her, not like you're trying to impress her. Ask it like you're already studying her, like you're already seeing it before she says it. Because here's the truth. Most women have a pattern, a blueprint, a magnetic pull toward a certain kind of man. And most of the time, they're not even aware of it. So when you ask that question, don't just listen to the words. Watch her body, watch her eyes. At first, she'll give you a standard answer. Confidence, humor, ambition, safe stuff, socially acceptable stuff. But here's where you lead, not with more questions, but with silence. Just hold her gaze and say, really? That's the first thing? And wait. That moment right there, that pause, that flicker in her eyes, that subtle shift in breath, that's when the real answer starts to surface. Maybe she's drawn to stillness, or edge, or mystery. Maybe she craves a man who can sit in silence without getting nervous. A man who doesn't chase, who just is. Whatever it is, when she says it, she's not just telling you what she likes. She's telling you how she wants to feel again. And if you're the kind of man who already lives in that energy, not pretending, not performing, just being, her mind starts making unconscious links between her desires and you. That's not manipulation. That's resonance. Here's what most guys get wrong. They hear what she likes and immediately try to become it. Don't. Just hold your ground, stay in your energy. Let her feel the tension between the man she's describing and the man sitting right in front of her. Because sometimes the most seductive thing a man can do is not change. Let her lean in. Let her wonder, does this kind of man even notice me the way I notice him? And that's when something deeper begins. Not attraction, not lust, recognition. She doesn't just feel seen, she starts seeing you as the embodiment of something she's always wanted, but rarely found. All from one question, and the silence that followed it. 5. There's something magnetic about being seen, not just looked at, but really seen. And one of the most powerful ways to create that moment is with a simple, grounded question. If I knew the real you, what would surprise me most? Now listen, this isn't a compliment, it's not small talk, and it's definitely not a setup for a story. This question is a doorway. Most women walk through the world wearing masks, polite, composed, performing just enough to be liked, but never revealing too much. And most men, they accept that surface version and call it connection, but not you. When you ask this question, slowly, calmly, like you're already sensing something deeper, you're offering her something rare, space to be real. She might pause. She might tilt her head and smirk, offering a playful response just to test the waters. That's okay, because what matters most is what happens after she answers. That silence, that breath, that split second where she wonders, did he see through that? And here's the secret. You did, or at least you gave her a moment to believe you might have. That's where attraction begins to shift, not toward performance, but toward presence. Because when a woman feels like she can drop the mask with you, you stop being just another man. You become a mirror. And in that reflection, she sees a version of herself that's rare, maybe even unfamiliar. The version that's not polished for approval, but real, raw, and unfiltered. Most men never even try to reach that part of her. They're too busy impressing, too busy filling the silence with stories or jokes or compliments. But not you. You sit with it. You hold the space. You let her feel exposed just for a moment, and you don't flinch. That's power. That's masculine presence. And that's why she remembers you. Not for what you said, but for how you made her feel when she said it. Seen, heard, understood. Because in a world full of noise, being the man who notices what goes unsaid is unforgettable. 6. There's a question I only ask when the energy between us has shifted. When the room gets quiet, when I know she feels something but can't quite name it yet. It's simple. Would you rather be understood or devoured? Now don't rush that. Let it come out slow, steady, no smile, no smirk, just quiet eye contact and an even tone, like you're not afraid of either answer. Because this isn't a game. It's not flirtation, it's a mirror. You're holding up her own emotional contradiction and letting her feel it. Every woman carries this dual craving. She wants to be cherished, to be seen, known, held. That's the desire for emotional safety. But right next to that, there's the hunger to be taken, not just touched, but claimed, to surrender to a man who doesn't lose himself in the fire, but stands calmly inside it. Most men only offer one side. They're either too soft, trying to understand her feelings like a therapist, or too reckless, charging in with heat and chaos without care. But you ask the question that acknowledges both. And when you do, watch closely. If she says understood, don't lean in with intensity. Just nod. Say something like, makes sense. Most people don't listen to what's not being said. That alone makes her feel seen. If she says devoured, you don't react with surprise. Just a slow, quiet smile. The kind that says you're not afraid of her shadow. Not everyone's honest about that, you say, and you let it hang. But the moment everything changes is when she pauses, when she looks away, when she says, can I choose both? That's when the energy tilts. That's when her walls soften. Because you just named something she lives with every day, but rarely admits, not even to herself. She doesn't want to choose. She wants a man who can offer both. Depth and danger, presence and pull. A man who can see her and still want all of her. And by simply asking that question, calmly, without expectation, without pushing, you just became the first man to touch that truth. Not with your hands, but with your understanding, and that is unforgettable. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is the thing everyone else is afraid to acknowledge. You're sitting there, maybe across the table, maybe close, but not touching. There's a pause in the conversation. No words, but everything suddenly feels louder. That's when you lean in, not with your body, but with your presence, and say, do you believe in tension that doesn't need words? You don't ask this to flirt. You're not trying to be clever. You're naming something that's already alive between you. See, most men never get to this point. They talk too much, fill every gap with noise, jokes, stories, compliments. But they never notice what's right there in the quiet, bubbling beneath the surface. But you're tuned in. You catch the change in her breath, the longer eye contact, the way the air between you sharpens, charges, stretches. When you ask this question, you're not demanding anything. You're offering recognition. You're saying, I feel this. Do you? It's a test, but not of her, of your awareness, your patience, your control. She may nod, she may whisper, yes, or she may say nothing at all, which in this case is still an answer. Because that kind of tension doesn't beg to be explained. It wants to be felt. It lives in the glance that lingers half a second longer than it should, the silence that feels heavy but comforting, the space between bodies that says more than 100 words ever could. And most men, they rush it. They break the moment. They try to turn it into something physical, fast. But not you. You let it breathe. You don't try to close it. You just sit in it, calm, present, fully aware. Because when a woman feels that you can hold that kind of tension without needing to act on it, that's rare. That's powerful. She'll remember that moment. Not because of what happened, but because nothing happened. And yet she felt everything. And the man who can create that, he becomes unforgettable. Preek, let's get something straight. These questions we've been talking about, they're not tricks. They're not meant to seduce, impress, or manipulate. They exist for something far deeper, something most men never even consider. You're not trying to make her want you. You're helping her feel something inside herself, something she rarely gives permission to rise. That's where the real connection lives. Because the most powerful questions don't touch her body. They stir her subconscious, the quiet part of her that feels, senses, and responds without thinking. The part that doesn't care about logic or type or how attractive you are on paper. It's not about saying the right thing. It's about asking the thing that reaches her at the right moment, with the right presence, in the right tone. Most men try to impress with noise, but a grounded man, he influences by silence. And every one of these questions shares something in common. They invite her imagination to do the work. You're not handing her an idea. You're giving her a mirror, a spark, a thread she can follow into herself. And the magic is, you're not forcing anything. You're not violating trust or pushing her into a space she didn't choose. You're simply creating a moment, an emotional pocket of safety and curiosity, and then stepping back to let her feel it. That's not just attraction. That's respect. That's trust. That's leadership. When a woman feels like she can explore her emotions with you watching without interfering, that's when she starts associating your presence with freedom, with mystery, with the parts of herself that feel most alive but rarely seen. And you didn't do anything to get that. You just knew when to stay quiet, when to listen, when to ask something that opened a door in her mind, and then have the strength to let her walk through it alone. That's the kind of man she remembers. Not because you impressed her, but because you helped her impress herself. And that's the difference between playing the game and changing it completely. 9. Let's be honest. The real power behind these questions, it's not the words, it's you. It's how you say them, how you carry yourself, how still you are in moments most men would rush, because words mean very little if your presence doesn't back them up. A high-value man doesn't speak to impress. He speaks to invite. And sometimes he doesn't speak at all because he knows the silence is where everything starts to shift. Look, when you ask a woman something personal, something charged, the first thing she's responding to isn't the question, it's the energy behind it. Were you relaxed? Did your tone stay calm? Were you steady? Or did you let nerves creep into your voice, your eye contact, your stillness, your timing? All of it says more than the question ever could. A seductive man doesn't need to push. He doesn't try to be charming. He doesn't scramble to prove value. He just is. And that alone creates a space most women rarely experience. A space where they can feel something without pressure, without expectation, without being boxed into a reaction. When you stop trying to impress her, something wild happens. You become magnetic. Because you're not seeking validation. You're not chasing a response. You're simply grounded, rooted in who you are. That's what makes her curious. That's what makes her lean in. And here's the truth. Women don't remember lines. They don't replay clever jokes or compliments. They remember how they felt around you. And more often than not, it wasn't what you said. It was the pause, the breath, the way you held eye contact without flinching, the way you didn't need to rush to fill the space. That's presence. That's masculine depth. And in a world full of noise, that kind of stillness is rare and unforgettable. So next time you feel the need to impress, don't. Just ask. Then wait. Let her step into the silence and feel something real. 10. Let's bring this full circle. Everything we've talked about in this video, the questions, the pauses, the tension, they're not tools to manipulate. They're not pickup lines. They're not tricks. They're doorways. Every question you ask isn't about getting her to open up to you. It's about giving her permission to open up to herself. You're not trying to win her over. You're guiding her in a moment where she feels something real, something personal, something undeniably hers. That's why this works. Not because you're smooth, but because you're present. You're not chasing her attention. You're becoming an experience. The kind of experience she can't shake. The kind that lingers in her body, in her memory, long after the night ends. Not because of what you said, but because of what you made her feel when she least expected it. A stoic playboy doesn't need validation. He doesn't need to perform. He leads with silence, with awareness, with timing. He knows that attraction isn't about pressure, it's about permission. And every question you've learned here, it's not a test for her, it's a reflection, a quiet challenge. It's her chance to meet a part of herself she usually keeps hidden. You're not asking her to choose you. You're asking her to choose truth, to feel something deeper than surface level attraction. That's what separates you from every other man she's met. You don't chase, you don't compete, you don't try to stand out. You simply are. A calm presence, a quiet mirror, a psychological imprint. That's what makes you unforgettable. And if you carry this forward, not as a tactic but as a way of being, then you're not just another guy in the room. You're the man she thinks about when everything else goes quiet. If you've made it this far, you already know. This isn't a game. This isn't about being smoother, smarter, or saying the perfect line. This is about presence. Because these 7 questions, they don't matter because of the answers they get. They matter because of the emotional space they open. And most men never get close to that space. They try too hard. They push too fast. They speak to be heard, but never stop long enough to let her feel. But you're different. You don't chase attention. You create atmosphere. You don't talk to impress. You ask to awaken. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not your words, but the way you made her imagination move without ever needing to touch her. That's what a stoic playboy understands. He doesn't beg for validation. He doesn't perform. He simply shows up with grounded energy, calm curiosity, and enough silence to let desire breathe. He becomes a mirror, not of who she pretends to be, but of who she is when no one's watching. That's the man who lingers in her memory, not because of what he said, but because of what he let her feel. So if you're ready to become that man, learn the art of asking slowly, of listening deeply, of holding space without needing to control what fills it. You don't need to impress anyone. You just need to show up with presence strong enough for her to feel, and stillness strong enough for her to trust. Because when a woman remembers you, not for the things you did, but for the parts of herself she discovered in your presence, you've already won.